There is a particular kind of missing person case that police officers learn to recognize early in their careers. An elderly person, living alone, early-stage cognitive decline, a routine that everybody around them knows by heart, the morning walk, the evening tea, the daily phone call to a family member. And then one day the routine stops. These cases almost always resolve the same way. The person is found within a mile of home, confused, tired, unharmed, relieved to see a familiar face. Almost always. Walter Hines was 73 years old, retired farmer, widower, lived alone in a stone cottage on the edge of Millhaven, a quiet, rural community 3 hours from the city. Rolling fields, narrow roads, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and nothing much ever happened. His daughter, Carol, called the police on Wednesday morning when Walter didn't answer his daily 9 a.m. phone call. His neighbor confirmed he hadn't been seen since Monday evening, 2 days ago, when he was spotted walking his usual route along the field path behind his cottage at dusk. Officer Ryan Cole drove out to Millhaven, expecting to find Walter sitting in someone's kitchen eating biscuits and wondering what all the fuss was about. Mysteria went with him because of one line in the missing person report. Subject has early-stage dementia diagnosis, known to wander occasionally, always found within 1 mile of home. She read that line 3 times on the drive out. Always, she said quietly. What? Ryan asked. It says he always wanders within 1 mile of home. Right, so he's been missing for 2 days, Ryan, in early November, in the countryside. If he was within 1 mile of home, someone would have found him by now. Ryan was quiet for a moment. So, something is different this time. Something, she said, or somewhere. She looked out the window at the countryside passing by. He didn't wander this time. He went somewhere specific. Millhaven was exactly what it looked like from the road. Small, quiet. The kind of community where front doors were left unlocked and people still stopped to talk in the lane. Walter Hines had lived here for 40 years, had farmed the same land his father had farmed before him, had raised Carol here, had buried his wife here 6 years ago. Everyone knew Walter, and everyone said the same thing. He was a gentleman, a kind man, a man who knew every field and every footpath within 10 miles of Millhaven better than he knew his own reflection. His cottage was small and tidy, the kind of tidiness that speaks of habit rather than effort. Everything in its place because it had always been in its place. Mysteria walked through it slowly. Ryan took notes from Carol, a woman in her late 40s, visibly frightened, holding a mug of tea she hadn't drunk. Has he wandered before? Ryan asked. 3 times in the last year, Carol said. The first time I found him in the field behind the house. The second time, Mrs. Patterson from next door found him at the end of the lane. The third time, the police found him on the old farm road, about half a mile east. Always close, Ryan said. Always. He always came back to the same places he knew from when he was younger. The farm, the lane, the field. Mysteria appeared in the doorway. The old farm road, she said. Where does it lead? Carol looked at her. It used to lead to the Granger property, old farmstead about 6 miles out. Nobody has lived there for 20 years. The road is barely passable now. But Walter knew it. He worked that land when he was young, before he took over his father's farm. Why? Mysteria looked at Ryan. That is where he went. The field path behind Walter's cottage showed exactly what Mysteria expected. Footprints, heading east. Walter's boots, confirmed by a matching pair still on his doorstep, size 9, worn at the outer heel in a pattern consistent with his age and gait. The prints followed the field path for half a mile, then turned off onto a narrow track that cut through a stretch of woodland before rejoining the old farm road. Ryan crouched beside the prince at the woodland entrance. He walked deliberately, he said, not wandering, not confused. These are straight, purposeful steps. Yes, Mysteria said. But he has dementia. He does. So, how is someone with dementia walking 6 miles in a straight line to a specific location? Mysteria looked at the tree line ahead. Dementia doesn't erase all memory equally, she said. It strips away the recent layers first. What happened last week, last month, last year. But the oldest memories, the ones laid down deepest, those stay longest. Sometimes they are the last thing to go. She started walking. Walter has lived in Millhaven for 40 years. He knows.
Every inch of this land. Not because he remembers it consciously, but because his body remembers it. The route to the Granger property isn't something he has to think about. It is something he simply knows. Like muscle memory, Ryan said, following. Like the oldest memory he has, she said. The question is why that memory pulled him there, and why now? They walked in silence for a while. The countryside around them was gray and cold. November fields stripped bare. The kind of quiet that cities never have, not peaceful, just empty. Then Ryan stopped. Mysteria. She turned. He was pointing at something on the ground beside the track. A walking stick. Walter's, Carol had confirmed he always carried one. It had been placed carefully against a fence post, not dropped, not fallen, set down deliberately, as if marking something. Mysteria crouched beside it. In the soft mud at the base of the fence post, a small area had been disturbed. Recently, something had been dug up, or uncovered, or found. The Granger farmstead appeared through the tree line as the old farm road crested a shallow hill. A stone farmhouse, 2 outbuildings, a collapsed barn at the far end of the yard. Everything abandoned, weathered, overgrown, and a light in the farmhouse window, faint, warm, the kind of light a single lamp makes. Ryan's hand went instinctively toward his radio. Mysteria put her hand on his arm. "Wait," she said quietly. She stood at the edge of the yard and looked at the farmhouse for a long moment. The front door was ajar, an inch, no more. The yard between them and the door was muddy and crossed with footprints, Walter's boots, but also tire tracks, recent. A vehicle had been here and left. "Someone else was here," Ryan said. "And left," she said, "before we arrived." She crossed the yard carefully, avoiding the footprints, and pushed the farmhouse door open. Inside, dim cold, smelling of damp stone and old wood, and Walter Hines. Sitting in a wooden chair beside a small camping lamp, coat still on, hands folded in his lap, eyes open, looking at the wall in front of him, alive. Ryan exhaled. "Mr. Hines," Mysteria said gently. "Walter." He turned slowly. His eyes were distant in the way that dementia makes eyes distant, present in the room but not entirely in the moment. "I remember this place," he said. "I know," she said. "Can you tell me why you came here?" He looked at the wall again. "Something is here," he said. "Something I put here, a long time ago." "What did you put here, Walter?" He was quiet for a long time. "The truth," he said. "I put the truth here." While Ryan stayed with Walter and called for a medical support, Mysteria searched the farmhouse. The wall Walter had been staring at was the interior stone wall of what had once been the farmhouse kitchen. Old, solid. One section near the floor had been disturbed, recently and repeatedly. She could tell by the scrape marks on the stone, and then covered back over with loose debris. She moved the debris, a gap in the stonework, not structural, deliberate, a small cavity, sealed decades ago and opened again recently. Inside, a metal tin, waterproof, old but intact. She opened it carefully. Inside the tin, a folded envelope, aged, yellowed, but sealed. And beneath the envelope, a woman's ring, gold, simple band. And a set of keys with a faded tag, a property address she didn't recognize. She opened the envelope. Inside, 3 pages of handwritten notes. Walter's handwriting, she had seen it on documents at the cottage and recognized it immediately. But the writing was younger, steadier, the handwriting of a man in his 40s rather than his 70s. She read it slowly, then she read it again. 30 years ago, when Walter was working the Granger property as a young farmer, he had discovered something on that land that he had never reported to anyone: a shallow grave. In the East Field, a woman, unidentified, buried without ceremony, without marking, without anyone in Millhaven or anywhere nearby reporting a missing person that matched her description. Walter had documented everything: the location, what he had found, the ring on her finger, the key in her pocket. He had taken the ring and the key because he was frightened, because he was young and alone and didn't know what to do, and then he had sealed everything in this tin and hidden it in this wall, and spent 30 years trying to forget it. He didn't come here because his dementia sent him wandering, Mysteria said to Ryan when the paramedics had taken Walter into their care. She held up the tin. He came here because whatever wall his mind had built around this memory, 30 years of deliberately not thinking about it, dementia had finally taken that wall down, and what was underneath came back, not as a thought, as a pull, as a need to come back here and deal with what he left behind. Ryan looked at the tin. "There's a body in the East Field?" "There was," she said. 30 years ago. She looked at the property address on the key tag. This key might tell us who she was. The property address on the key tag led to a small storage unit in a town 15 miles from Millhaven. The unit had been registered 30 years ago to a woman named Dorothy Reeves. Missing persons records, once Mysteria requested a search going back 30 years, returned one result matching the time frame and the location. Dorothy Reeves, 41 years old. Reported missing by her sister 31 years ago. Case never solved, never closed. Classified as an open missing persons investigation that had simply run cold. The East Field of the Granger property was excavated the following morning. Dorothy Reeves was found exactly where Walter's notes said she would be. The cause of death, determined by forensic examination, was not what anyone expected. She had not been murdered. Dorothy Reeves had died of a cardiac event, natural causes. Alone in that field on a winter morning 31 years ago, a woman who had been walking across that land, whose heart had simply stopped, and who had lain undiscovered until a young farmer named Walter Hines had found her days later. Walter had panicked. He was 23 years old. He had found a dead woman on land he was working. He didn't know who she was or how she had died. He was frightened of what people might think, frightened of being blamed for something he hadn't done. So he had buried her and taken her ring and her key because he couldn't bring himself to leave her with nothing, and spent 30 years carrying it. Walter Hines was not charged with any offense. The circumstances, his age at the time, his clear distress, the determination that Dorothy's death had been from natural causes were considered fully. Dorothy Reeves was returned to her family. Her sister, now in her 70s, was informed. She cried for a long time. Then she said something that stayed with Mysteria. "I always knew she hadn't just left. Dorothy wouldn't leave without saying goodbye. I always knew she was somewhere out there. I just never knew where." Walter Hines was taken to a care facility closer to Carol's home where he could be properly looked after. On the day he was settled in, he seemed calm, more present than he had been in months, Carol said, as if something that had been pressing on him from inside had finally been lifted. He didn't remember finding Dorothy. He didn't remember the tin or the notes or the 30 years of silence, but he seemed in some way that nobody could fully explain, lighter. Mysteria and Ryan drove back to the city as the sun went down over the Millhaven fields. Ryan was quiet for most of the drive. He buried her because he was scared, he said finally, not because he was cruel. "Yes," Mysteria said, and spent 30 years punishing himself for it even while he was forgetting it. "The mind forgets," she said. "The weight doesn't." Ryan looked out at the fields passing by. Dorothy's sister waited 31 years for an answer. "She got one," Mysteria said, "because an old man with dementia followed a memory his conscious mind couldn't hold anymore." The oldest memories, Mysteria said quietly, are sometimes the most honest ones. She looked out at the darkening countryside. That is what brought him back, not confusion, conscience.
Walter Hines walked 6 miles through the countryside on a cold November night, guided by a memory his conscious mind had spent 30 years trying to bury, and his dementia had finally set free. Dorothy Reeves had been waiting 31 years for someone to find her. It took a retired farmer, an old tin box, and one agent who noticed that a man who always wandered within 1 mile of home had this time gone somewhere specific. Agent Mysteria. Case 8, closed. Case 9, someone is selling secrets that shouldn't exist, is already waiting.